This episode of The Unstarving Musician is sponsored by Liner Notes. Learn from the hundreds of musicians and industry pros I've spoken with for The Unstarving Musician on topics such as marketing, songwriting, touring, sync licensing, and much more. Sign up for Liner Notes. Liner Notes is an email newsletter from yours truly in which I share some of the best knowledge gems garnered from the many conversations featured on The Unstarving Musician. You'll also be privy to the latest podcast episodes and Liner Notes subscriber exclusives. Sign up at unstarvingmusician.com. It's free and you can unsubscribe at any time. This is The Unstarving Musician. I'm Rabanzo. This is my podcast. It features conversations with independent music artists and industry professionals with occasional special topic episodes featuring yours truly. A glimpse into the minds of my varied guests, all intended to help independent music artists better understand the marketing, business, and creative processes that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. Welcome to another episode. It is such a joy to be in your ears, earbuds, on your speakers, as always. This is another rewind episode of The Unstarving Musician. What is a rewind episode, you may ask? It is a previously published episode, one of my favorites that I choose for you, and one that I think merits republishing. And it also gets a fresh edit, which means that you will find it even more enjoyable from a listening perspective. Before we get to that, if you love this podcast, please visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor to learn about the many ways of showing your love and support. We have a new tip jar there. So, click tip done. Your love equals support. We appreciate you. So Alyssa Trahan, singer-songwriter based in Nashville, Alyssa Trahan, is the feature of this rewind episode. She first appeared on the podcast in episode 18 in 2017, which is kind of amazing to me because the depth of our conversation rivals anything I've done to date, as do the accomplishments Alyssa had made at her then 22 years of age. I should try to get her back on the podcast for an update. She's pretty amazing. Topics we cover include why she moved to Nashville and how that went down from Rochester, New York, her then latest single, her endeavors in sound engineering and mixing, endorsements, sponsors, crowdfunding, her education, gigs that pay the bills, her views on business and marketing, merch, and the biggest lesson she had learned to date in her time being in the music business, and more. You can find all things Alyssa Trahan at alyssatrahan.com. There will be a link in the show notes, and I believe she has new music that you will definitely want to check out. Please enjoy my conversation with Alyssa Trahan. Alyssa, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. I appreciate your time today on a Saturday morning as it is.
Yeah, I don't usually wake up this early on Saturday morning, so you're special.
Lucky me. I wondered, I actually saw a message from you that didn't come all that late, but I kind of turned in early because I gotta be on it tomorrow because I'm talking to Alyssa. So I was up. You probably saw I responded early this morning, but anyway, I appreciate you getting up too. So we know one another through Mira Godo, mutual friend, and apparently a new songwriting collaborator for you in the Nashville area. Tell me about when you two first met real quick.
Yeah, so we first met through a mutual friend of ours whose name is Jane Bach, and she's another songwriter in Nashville. You may have heard some of her stuff. She's written stuff for Reba and Charles Eston from Nashville, a bunch of people, but she introduced us and we started writing together, and we just worked really well together, so we kept on doing it, and now we're friends.
That's very cool. Yeah, Mira, as you know, was featured in a recent episode, which I'll put in the show notes if anybody's interested who's listening to this that knows Mira, probably so because you two know each other, and she was really great about spreading the word about the episode. She was a lot of fun to work with. Now, tell me you haven't had anything weird that happened to you when you first went to Nashville you moved there from Rochester, is that right? New York?
Yes.
And you probably heard all about Mira's spiders. Did anything weird like that happen for you when you first got into town?
Oh, yeah, she's told me all about it, showed me pictures, and it's terrifying. We haven't had any huge problems like that yet. We've seen, bigger bugs than I'm used to in New York.
Yeah.
But we haven't had any insane problems like that, at least not yet. But I don't know, I'm kind of bracing myself for it.
Well, it's probably okay. You've been there for a while. You're not in unfamiliar surroundings, so whatever might happen, you're going to be like, it's like, okay, at least I'm at home.
Yeah, and after that happens to friends of mine, I research it and I Google everything and have a list together. If this kind of spider shows up, this is what you do. If you get bitten by this is what you do. So I'm ready.
It's nice to be able to see pictures of them online so you can be a little more sure. I remember back in the day when if we didn't have a library book, we didn't know what it looked like unless we saw one. So one thing I talked to Mira about, which would be fun to hear from you on as well, is how Nashville came about and the time span from which she decided she wanted to do it. Well, there were a couple different points she talked about when she first started thinking about it, which for her, I guess, was forever, and then when she decided she was going to do it, when she actually did it, and then kind of what happened in the near term. Can you give us a story of how getting to Nashville happened for you?
Yeah, so I've always wanted to be a singer-songwriter, musician, artist, whatever you want to call it. Since I can remember, my whole life I've wanted to do that. And I think it was 2009, I convinced my family to take a vacation to Nashville. And we just came as tourists just to have fun. And we were here for probably like 4 or 5 days. And I just fell in love with the city. I knew from that moment that I was going to live here someday. And since then, I started thinking of ways to make it happen. And, how am I going to do this? I'm going to go there alone. It's going to be terrifying, all this kind of stuff. But that was always in my mind that it would happen someday. And then my music career started progressing and things were going better and better in Rochester, New York. So then I convinced my dad to take me on business trips to Nashville, I guess you can call them. So we started taking trips here, I'd say every month and a half or so for about a week. And we did that probably 7 or 8 times. And, eventually it was clear that I had to move here as quickly as possible. So our last trip before I moved here, we just spent looking at apartments for a week straight because there are probably 1,000 or more here. And I finally moved here about a year and a half ago. So, yeah.
And so 2009, that started a ways back, so it was a bit of a period of time before you got there. But so how old were you when you moved there? Were you 21 yet?
No, I moved here, let's see, when I was 20.
Okay. Yeah, a little different than Mira's story. I know she's not an old lady or anything, but and did you end up going by yourself initially?
I actually moved here with my boyfriend. We've been together for over 5 years, and he moved down with me.
Cool. And the reason I ask about all that is I know there are a lot of people who would like to do as you and Mira are and chase the songwriting dream and perform and be around all the talent and expertise that's there. So I don't know. I think it's kind of funny. It sounds, your story, I don't know if Mira's talked to you much about how she ended up there, but very contrasting stories because brought your family down there. And the first time you went, there was a good amount of time between then and when you got there. But anyway, pretty fun stuff. So what is the deal with pickles? I know you get that question.
Yes, I do. So pickles are my favorite food, dill pickles to be exact. I don't like sweet pickles. They've been my favorite food for pretty much my whole life. It's always been, kind of one of my things, I guess. And recently I wanted to write a song that included pickles. And, I was thinking, how can I include pickles in a song without making it incredibly cheesy and weird and just not a good song?
Mm-hmm.
So I came up with the concept for Pickle Jar, which is my newest single. And, I was just thinking about what's a cool line I can use with pickle jars. And then I thought of opening a pickle jar. Like, how it's kind of a cliche that guys have to open jars for girls because girls aren't strong enough. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of write an anthem, if you will, for girls and women who can open their own pickle jars and don't need help from the men. So Pickle Jar was born.
If I'd have listened to the lyrics a few more times, I might have gotten the anthem aspect out of it. But it's a great track. I heard it on Spotify, and I know you're on Google Play, which is what I subscribe to. I know that you on top of being a multi-instrumentalist, which I want to talk about in a few, have also done some engineering work. Did with Pickle Jar, did you have someone doing all that for you, or do you always have hands-on in the engineering or mixing of your tracks?
I'm always very hands-on. I like to be a part of every part of the process. So I wrote the song by myself, and then when I decided I wanted to record it, we went to a studio in Nashville. It's called Sound Emporium.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the big studios around that, still exists and people still go to. And we had session musicians come in, which are basically the musicians that just play to make a living in Nashville. They
Mm-hmm.
play on everything you hear on the radio. I mean, from Luke Bryan to Jason Aldean to Faith Hill to everybody they've played with. So we had them come in and lay down their parts, and then I brought the session home and I comped everything, I edited everything, I picked out which solos and which instrumental licks and parts I wanted. I recorded the vocals at my studio, and then we sent it off to professional mixing and mastering with some friends of mine I've been working with for a few years. And yeah, but I'm still very hands-on on that part too. I approve the mixes and we talk, and the guy that mixes my stuff finds out what I like to hear in the mix, and it's always a lot of fun. It's kind of like Christmas.
So it sounds like you have gotten to the point in your skill with that people are generally able to start working with it right away. They're not having to do a lot to it, and they're actually coming to you for, okay, cool. So we can obviously do the mastering and make it sound like it's radio ready or Spotify ready, as the kids probably say. How long have you been doing that aspect of the music, and when did you reach a level of proficiency where you're able to do some things like this, like recording your own vocal tracks and mixing it and consulting on the final mixes?
Yeah, I've been doing the engineering side for a while now. I started because when I was younger, it was one of my first ever studio experiences, and I wasn't quite sure, who I was as an artist yet, and really what the whole music industry was. I mean, I was probably 16, and I won't get into it, but I had a bad experience at a studio, so I'm stubborn and decided, hey, I can do this myself. I'll just go learn how to do it and, make my own music from now on. So that's what I did. I looked up, which recording program was the best, and I decided on Pro Tools, which is kind of the industry standard. And I just became obsessed with learning how to use it. I mean, I was on YouTube just watching tutorials for hours on end in my room and just trying out new stuff and learning how to use it and how to make the sounds I wanted and how to put everything together. And, after a few months of my obsession, I finally learned how to use it somewhat. And, I just kept doing it because it was so much fun. And I got to the point that I semi knew what I was doing, at least I thought I did. And then I went to school for it. I have my degree in audio engineering, and that helped a bit. And now I'm in Nashville, where I'm also learning a lot still from, my producer friends and just continuing to watch tutorials on the subject. And now I actually have a demo business as well, where I produce music for other artists and other writers.
That's very cool. Second stream of income, perhaps primary.
Yeah, got to pay those bills.
Yeah. So, where did you go to school for audio engineering?
I went to a community college called Finger Lakes Community College in Canandaigua, New York. They have a really great music program and beautiful studios. I mean, the Zach Brown band actually recorded there, which was a big reason why I thought it would be cool to study there.
What a great name for a community college that does music. Finger Lakes.
Yeah.
When you got there, because of you'd done a lot of self-taught work, were you dramatically ahead of the game, or did you enter that program with a lot of people who were just like you that had been playing with it forever and, well, for some time?
There were all kinds of people that were in the same major I was. There were a couple people that were similar to me in that they had already had experience with it and already knew a little bit about the program. I would say for the first year, I don't think I was challenged I guess I'll say, because that was all the introductory stuff, and it was still cool to, be formally taught how to use it because I just learned off YouTube. But the program had all kinds of students, which was pretty cool.
Yeah. Is YouTube still a great way to learn Pro Tools or something like it,
Oh,
in
yes,
your opinion?
absolutely. I still look up tutorials all the time if, I need to do something that I'm not fully comfortable doing yet.
Yep. God bless YouTube. You can learn how to cut fruit or use Pro Tools.
Yes.
So, I told you I was going to make a left turn or two during our conversation. I also wanted to ask you about Yummy's Coffee. I see that you're a coffee person, and I've never heard of it. Are they out of Nashville or New York or where?
Yummies is actually in New York. It's in a town called Fairport, and I'm friends with the people that work there, and they actually sponsored a music video of mine not too long ago. It's called Over You. It's on YouTube if you're interested, and they have delicious coffee, delicious frozen yogurt. They're one of those places that is kind of like a frozen yogurt bar where you get whichever flavors you want. They have like 12 to choose from. And then they have a toppings bar, and it's a lot of fun. And it's a little overwhelming because there are so many toppings and frozen yogurt flavors, and it's really fun.
I asked because I love coffee and I'd never heard of it. So, and I actually don't get coffee out that much anymore. I've been working from home even more than I used to these days. And I don't know if Mira told you, but my wife and I, for the last year, have lived in Panama in Central America. And so we surprisingly, in this rural little jungle town we're in, there's a lot of places with nice, equipment for making coffee. So I can certainly get coffee out, but I'm
Oh,
typically
cool.
like French pressing at home. We recently did a coffee farm investment tour thing where I learned the finer points of 1,000 ways to f up a cup of coffee. So that was really I came home from that and just got all of a sudden very like I'm taking notes about the different ways I make it. But anyway, well,
Oh,
okay.
that's awesome.
Is Yummy's located anywhere outside of that area of New York you mentioned, or?
No, that is their only location for right now.
Dang, I guess I got to go there.
Gotta go to New York.
I need to go there anyway. So, Breed Love Guitars, you're an endorsee, right?
Mm-hmm.
I
I
imagine
am, yeah.
I imagine a lot of musicians and up and comers, or in fact, I know many of them are interested about endorsements. Can you talk about how yours came about, and perhaps throw in a I don't know, tip or maybe lessons you learned with getting that one? And if you have others too, you can talk about those as well.
Yeah, so with Breedlove, I had been playing Breedlove guitars. I wouldn't say exclusively, but they've been my favorite for quite a long time. I mean, when I went to get my first big girl guitar, I guess you could say, my first real guitar
Hmm.
for, playing shows and recording and stuff like that, I chose the Breedlove over other brands of guitars just because I genuinely loved the sound. I loved the look and the feel of it, and it became my primary guitar. So then after I'd say like a year or two of just playing my Breedlove, having it in all of my press and videos, things like that, I got in touch with Breedlove and I said, "Hey, I'm interested in, things that you do with artists." And they said, "Hey, do you want to be an endorsed artist?" And I said, "Yes, of course." So that is really, really cool because I genuinely love their guitars and they have been so great for performing and recording. I get such a beautiful sound from my guitars. And yeah, they're made in America, which I think is really cool. They have a lot to choose from. They have other instruments like mandolins and stuff like that. And the customer service is really great, which you don't get a lot. So I like that too.
That's fantastic. And do you have other endorsements currently?
I don't have any other quote endorsements. I have sponsorships for things like, albums and videos and certain concerts and things like that. So I'll have some companies and investors kind of sponsor one thing like that. So it's not a long-term sponsorship, it's more a short-term kind of instant gratification sponsorship, I'll say.
What was your first significant sponsorship, and how did it come about?
My first significant sponsorship, that would probably be the Over You music video I mentioned with Yummies. They sponsored the music video, and if you watch the music video, you'll see what I'm talking about. But they let me use a bunch of their ice cream, and it was really, really cool.
So that one came about because I assume, well, obviously you had a relationship, you knew the folks there, right?
Yes.
And they liked you, obviously.
Yeah.
So did that help you with the next one? And can you talk about what the next one was, if you remember?
Oh, absolutely. I would say the next one would be my I Love Your Truck music video. That was sponsored by Hazelton Chevrolet, which is the Chevy dealership in Rochester, New York. And it definitely helped to have another sponsorship in my past to bring up and say, hey, this company sponsored my other music video and it was great for both sides. Here's why you should sponsor this video. Because for the I Love Your Truck video, I needed trucks that I did not have to put in the video. And we approached Hazelton about it, and they were all for it, luckily. And that was another really big sponsorship for me that definitely made a difference. And like I said, is another thing that I can bring to future sponsors and say, hey, this is what I did, this is how good it went, and this is why you should sponsor me too.
So going back to the Yummies coffee sponsorship, how was that something that you approached them about, or how did it come about? You knew you needed it, and yeah, what happened that they were like, we want to sponsor you?
That one specifically, the owner had mentioned to me before that he wanted to help me in my career financially, and I basically told him, "Wow, that's amazing of you. Thank you." And then we started planning out the Over You music video, and the film crew and the producers that I was working with thought it would be really fun to have an ice cream scene. So then, the light bulb went off, and I thought, "Hey, I should go ask Yummies if they want to be a part of it." And it was, just a perfect match, and it worked out really well, and the timing was great, and yeah, it was just really awesome.
That's a really cool story. So when you arranged well, do you know if they had done anything like this before?
They hadn't. That was their first music sponsorship. They had some other artists come in and play like acoustic shows at their location, but this was the first like music video that they were a part of.
And as far as what they provided, did they just make some suggestions? Hey, we'll do this for you, or did they ask you what you need, or did you already go and did you go to them and say, hey, we have this cool idea. I could really use this specific kind of help. How did the two of you iron out the details of what the sponsorship looked like?
Kind of all of the above. I mean, I had the script, if you will, for the music video, and I had the list of shots that we needed and the props that we needed. So I went to them and I said, "Hey, here's what I need. What would you be comfortable providing for the video? What would work for you?" And they basically donated, I don't know how many tubs of frozen yogurt, a ridiculous amount. And then they also provided coffee for the whole crew because the video shoot was from, oh gosh, I don't know, like 4 in the morning until like 9 at night. It was really long, so
Wow.
they provided coffee as well. And then, I agreed to put their logo in the video and we agreed to cross promote. And like I said, it worked really well and it was a really good, you know, business relationship thing.
When you went to them with your ask, you obviously you're have some level of comfort because you're on because you have the relationship that you do. Were you able to formulate that ask on your own, or did you kind of talk to anyone, your family or anyone about, how should I approach them, or was it all just super casual and they were kind of on board with everything?
It was relatively casual. I'm really all about being professional at all times, so I did ask for advice from some of my friends that are in, maybe they are a lawyer or just a businessman, whatever they may be. I asked for some advice on, what terms should I use, what would be a fair agreement, and all that kind of stuff. But for that one in particular, it was relatively casual. My other sponsorships have been a little more business-like, I guess you could say.
Sure, as they probably all should be to a degree.
Yeah.
And so how many have you had to date, sponsorships?
Oh gosh, I don't even know.
Approximately, are we talking dozens, hundreds?
Oh, I would say probably dozens. I've had quite a few shows that have been sponsored.
Hmm.
And, basically that's so the venue can have me come from Nashville and, make sure that they can cover my air travel, things like that. But I would say it's in the dozens. I don't know the exact number, but yeah.
When one like yourself works in Nashville, is this a topic of conversation that comes up among your peers? Or, I'm sorry, I really wanted to say, is it something that is talked about from an educational perspective, or is it more a thing where you're asking friends because you know that they either know someone who's had some successful sponsorships or they themselves have had them?
Yeah, I mean, it does come up in conversation. I mean, when you're friends with people that are kind of in the same boat that you are, it comes up and you all give advice to try to help each other. And I have had friends come to me and say, "Hey, how'd you do this? I'm looking to do something similar. Can you help me out? Do you have anyone that you can introduce me to?" And of course, if I do, I always, share their contact information and set them up for a meeting or give them a certain place they should check out, whatever it may be. But it definitely comes up. I would say in writing sessions, it comes up pretty frequently just because, there's a period of like 20, 30 minutes where you always just catch up with whoever you're writing with and, tell them about what's been going on. And then when things like that come up, they say, "Oh, wow, I've been looking to do that too. How'd you do that? Do you have any tips?" And yeah, I've definitely given advice to a few people, and I've also asked for advice from quite a few friends as well.
So the education for that has been outside of your, those things you described with Yummy's coffee. The education for it in Nashville is really part of the whole networking thing. It's not necessarily something that is formally discussed anywhere, or is it?
I mean, it may be, especially if you study it in, say, Belmont College. I'm sure they talk about it. But yeah, for me personally, I have learned the most just through networking and meeting people and hearing their stories and just talking to them. I do have some people that are in either the music business or other businesses that I ask for advice from time to time,
Mm-hmm.
but I think I've definitely learned the most from friends that have experienced what I'm also looking to experience, I guess you could say.
Cool. Along similar lines, I see that you had at least one crowdfunding campaign, and the one that I saw was GoFundMe, which I guess was done many months ago now, or several months ago.
Yeah, I did that. Let's see, that was probably last year, maybe like summer of last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did that for a new EP because I had a prominent member of the music industry come to me and say, "Hey, I'd love to work with you." And we had met a few times and we came up with a plan to have me record a new EP with 4 or 5 songs on it. And he was then going to pitch that around Nashville and see if he could, get the ball rolling for me. And this was a huge opportunity, but I just did not have the funds for it
Right.
because recording music is just really expensive, especially if you're a full-time musician and just got out of college and moved almost 1,000 miles away from your hometown and, didn't have the money for it. So I turned to I don't like calling them fans, but people that support my music. And they were so incredibly supportive and gracious and got me to 1,000 over my initial goal, which was ridiculous. So I was able to do the EP, and it's currently being pitched, and Pickle Jar is actually on that EP. But yeah, that was a much bigger success than I was anticipating.
Yeah, it looks like you did really well. I have a good friend who he did a Kickstarter. I believe it was Kickstarter campaign for this is way off topic here, but it's for a new type of backpack for skiers and snowboarders that is, less bulky and awkward when you're on the ski lift and just has a lot of cool features. But he had really great success with it and had a great story. Did you find yourself coming out of that with, speaking of which, with stories that you were able to share along the way with people, like off of the platform, off of the GoFundMe platform? I noticed my friend was doing, for instance, an email campaign to just let people know where it was at, and he was sharing fascinating stories with things that happened, like when he went to China to find a manufacturer, and like it just did not go the way he expected, and how he ultimately had a dress designer had someone like spec out the product for manufacturing. But anyway, did you have stories like this that you were able to share?
I didn't do a lot that I hadn't done in the past with other EPs.
Mm-hmm.
That part was pretty, I guess, straightforward. We did have a few issues with scheduling
Mm-hmm.
and finding the right musicians.
Mm-hmm.
Just basically working with their crazy busy schedules. And there was one point that I wanted to record at a studio, and then Reba decided she wanted to record there, so I couldn't record there that day.
Damn her. Sorry.
I know. No, but it worked out really well. And if anything, I would say the biggest story is just how hard I had to work with the GoFundMe to make it that successful. I mean, I think it was probably a month or two that it was up, I did something with it every day, whether it was film a video or edit or post a video or do an email campaign or personally ask people, or it definitely took a lot of work.
That does not surprise me. Is it fair to say that during that time, you did almost nothing else, worked on almost nothing else?
Yeah, that's pretty fair to say. It
Yeah,
was, my full-time job for that month and a half-ish that it was up.
I understand that's the way it goes, and such is life with a lot of projects, right? That
Yeah.
if they're going to be really good, they are going to have to get your full-on attention. Well, that's interesting. Do you think you would do that a campaign like that again?
It's possible. I really don't like asking for money. That's one of those things I really don't like doing. So even when I put up the campaign, even though I knew I had no other option, that was kind of my only choice. I was pretty uncomfortable just because, you never know if people are really going to donate, if it's going to be a success or a complete failure. And like I said, luckily with that, it worked out, which I'm still very surprised about. I really don't like asking for money. So if I do it again in the future, it wouldn't be for quite a while, just because I don't want to keep going back and keep asking for donations, if you know what I mean. It's possible if another opportunity comes up that I just simply can't afford and can't pass up, then it's possible. But I think I would first try to, make money with my shows or my demo business or something of that nature.
Well, that's very humble, I guess is the right word, and I think that people surely appreciate that about you. Those who know you and know about you. I want to go back to your education. Do you have any formal music education as far as your playing education, or were you self-taught, or do you have a little bit of both?
I am mostly self-taught when it comes to, instruments and singing and stuff like that. I did take piano and voice lessons for a really short period of time when I was a kid, mostly to help with musicals I was a part of.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really get to do a lot of, my country artist stuff. Other than the instrument and voice lessons in school and what I just mentioned, I didn't really have any formal training. My dad taught me how to play guitar when I was about 11, and let's see, I basically taught myself how to play piano. I went to lessons just to kind of strengthen my ability to read music and, play what I see on the sheet music. But other than that, I really taught myself how to play most of the instruments I play, mainly because I would be recording a song and I would say, oh wow, I really wish this song had mandolin. But living in Rochester, New York, there aren't a lot of country players that are available to play on your stuff. So, like I said before, I'm stubborn. So I learned how to play mandolin myself, got the cheapest one at whatever it is, Guitar Center, Amazon, whatever it is, taught myself how to play it, and put it down on the track I was doing. So that has been the case with quite a few instruments I play, just because I hear it on the recording in my head and I want it there in real life, but I don't know anyone that plays these instruments. So, I just learned them myself, and I keep doing that. Now I'm in Nashville, so I guess I don't have to do that as much, but it's still fun to learn new instruments.
Yeah, I would imagine. Do you play drum kit also?
I don't technically play drum kit. I can play a few really simple beats, but that's pretty much it. My boyfriend is actually a drummer, so I'll leave that to him.
And are you still playing piano?
Yes, I play piano pretty frequently. I put keyboard elements on pretty much every song I record.
I'm going to pay attention now when I listen to some of your tracks. And do you consider yourself pretty proficient with reading, or given I know that you're around a pretty high caliber crowd with your peers there, but yeah, how do you see yourself as far as your sight reading abilities?
My sight reading is good, I guess. I learned how to sight read a few instruments in school, such as silver flute. I consider myself to be pretty good at sight reading when it comes to that instrument, as well as other woodwind instruments that I play. But when it comes to string instruments like guitar, mandolin, ukulele, or even piano, keyboard, I think I learn better and perform better just by ear. So I'll listen to whatever I need to play, or, chart it out on what the chords are and just play based off that. When I learn cover songs for shows I do, I always learn it by ear. And that's how I learned how to play piano in the first place too. But yeah, I would say I'm better at playing by ear than sheet music.
Did you say silver flute?
Yeah.
And so I assume that was a brass, well, not in the woodwind family, is it? Is it?
It is, yeah. Silver flute's in the woodwind family,
Okay.
and I always specify which one because I play multiple kinds of flutes. So that's why I said that.
Dang, you do know a lot of instruments. That's very cool. And you mentioned cover tunes. Are you when you perform live? I'm gonna guess, but when you do the bigger shows, you're probably doing a lot less of that. And then when you're doing some of the in-between shows, you're doing a mix of covers and originals. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I play a lot of different kinds of shows. Like you said, when I do big shows, maybe if I'm opening for a big artist or I'm the headliner, whatever it may be, I'll do mostly originals with maybe one or two covers in there.
Mm-hmm.
But I do a lot of shows that are private parties, or, the kind of shows that pay the bills, that I have to fill 3 or 4 hours with material, and they want covers. That's what the audience likes to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So, depending on the venue and the crowd, we'll do a mix of covers and originals.
Do you have a comedic voice in your head that ever says at those shows, those ones where they want to hear cover tunes, but don't you guys know I'm a rising star?
I guess kind of. I've definitely had some, experiences where I have to do almost all covers, and not to say I don't like doing that, because I mean, I still love just playing music and playing out, but
Mm-hmm.
it's, when you all you want to do is play your original music, it's kind of a bummer to only be able to play cover songs, but like I said, it's not that bad. It's just kind of you wish you could play your originals so people could hear them.
Surely you just slip one in and don't say anything about it.
I do sometimes. I mean, I'm at the point now that people, especially where I'm from, they recognize me and let me play my original stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And some people in the Rochester area actually know my songs and, sing along the words and stuff. It's really only when I play at a new venue that they say, "Hey, no originals," which is kind of a bummer, but
Yeah. God. And what does a decent paying the bills gig pay for you? And are you doing those? I'm assuming you're doing those predominantly in Nashville, but also some in the New York, Rochester area. Is that right? And then what is a decent, pay the bills kind of show pay?
I actually do more in other areas that aren't Nashville for paying gigs,
Okay.
because Nashville's funny in that you don't get paid to play. So you'll be lucky if you get tips, and that's just not a reliable way to pay the bills. So when I'm in Nashville, I do some shows and some showcases, stuff like that, but I do a lot of writers rounds,
Mm-hmm.
which you don't get paid for, but those are really cool special gigs because you just get to sit down with your guitar and a couple writer friends and just tell the stories behind your songs and play them for an audience that actually wants to listen, which is really fun. When I do have paying gigs, like I said, a lot of them are actually in other areas, especially in New York, but it varies based on what night of the week it is.
Sure.
If it's a weeknight, it'll be usually a few hundred, couple to a few hundred. And then on the weekends, it ranges, again, depends on the venue and the crowd and things like that. It ranges from a few hundred to maybe a grand.
Okay.
So it really depends. There's a really wide spectrum of what a paying gig could be.
Of course, yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, yeah, you're making a few bucks on those, which you said they were to pay the bills.
Yep.
So, did you say that Nashville proper, for the most part, for the types of gigs that we're talking about, are largely play for tips?
Yeah, it's mainly play for tips, and also a lot of the gigs they want you to play only covers. They want you to be a cover band. And if you're trying to be an original artist in Nashville, it's not necessarily a great idea to be actively seeking out those gigs.
Mm-hmm.
I
Sure.
mean, you want to be taken seriously as an artist writer and showcase your original material. You don't want to be compared to other people or just kind of get lost in the Broadway scene, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Broadway's the main drag in Nashville, if anyone doesn't know that.
I didn't.
um, and yeah, that's like the main street in Nashville where, all the cover bands play, and it's really cool, really crazy, but it's not really the place for original artists, I guess I could say. I've had people tell me to not play on Broadway. That was my plan when I first moved here, was to just play out every night
Mm-hmm.
on Broadway and get all these gigs and pay the bills that way, but I learned real quick that's not reality.
Broadway in and of
So,
itself is a tough gig.
yeah, I mean that's where they want you to play 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. covers only.
Ugh.
Big band stuff.
Yeah.
They want you to do the drinking songs, and
Yeah.
that's not really my scene.
Yeah, I understand. I want to talk a little bit about business and marketing with the hours rapidly going by here, and I very much like to touch on this topic. I notice you have a good, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, merchandise. You have a good offering, and was kind of curious if merch is much a part of the revenue stream, if you will, or the income when you're doing shows, and if so, which shows, and or how, or is it actually a decent part or a growing part of the income? And if it's not from through shows and it's more just all online, how's that working out?
I have had CDs, posters, and guitar picks available on my website and at my shows for a pretty long time. And then it wasn't until recently that I also got t-shirts because I had a lot of people requesting that we get them. So, I had enough people saying they would buy them that it made sense to purchase them and then sell them. Because it's actually quite expensive to buy merch for yourself. Getting t-shirts printed and CDs manufactured, posters printed, all that kind of stuff costs a pretty penny, which you don't really think about, but it's definitely worth it in my eyes to have that kind of stuff. I wouldn't say it's a huge part of my revenue stream. If anything, it helps get my name out there and spread the word about my music, because if someone's wearing my name on a t-shirt, that's, free marketing. Well, not free, but marketing just walking around for you. I played at a festival recently and several people came wearing my t-shirts and they just walked around the whole fair wearing my t-shirts. So, that's great marketing right there. But I would say I broke even on especially the t-shirts and posters and stuff like that. And I find that my biggest profit, I guess, is off my physical CDs, which I find surprising because
Yeah.
all the music industry professionals and specialists will tell you nobody buys CDs anymore. physical CDs are dead. There's no point in getting them printed and manufactured. And I don't know. It's working for me. Maybe I'm the exclusion. I don't know.
And
But
you're all like, tell that to Adele.
yeah, right. But yeah, I have noticed that people regularly buy my CDs both on my website and at my shows. So as long as they're still buying them, I'm gonna keep printing them, and I don't know.
I can
Maybe
t-
I'm the exclusion, like I said, but
I think that's great. I was talking to an original artist just in the last couple of weeks for the show, and his CDs are they're thematic. They're actually instrumental. He's got an instrumental band that's in this genre called guitarcore, so they're kind of a metal edge sounding thing, but the everything's written with melody and verse structure in mind. But he and I'm sure to a large extent most recording artists are this way, but for him that package, that CD tells such a story. And of course, there's all the artwork and stuff. But I was going to say, I can tell you why you're losing money. Your signed stuff's the same price as your unsigned stuff. What's up with that?
yeah, I mean, I don't really see the point in charging for my signature. I don't know. I always thought that was strange.
Well, why not just sign every copy? I think you should charge more.
Maybe.
Um, and you're pretty hands-on with the marketing aspect of your venture, right?
Yes.
What's your favorite part of the marketing or business aspect?
I don't know. I like all of it. It's cool to kind of study it. I like studying artists that I follow and just seeing what their marketing team is up to and seeing what works, what doesn't work, what the new model is, things like that. But I don't know. I don't know what my favorite part is. I mean, every part of it is cool and stressful at the same time.
And do you have a team that works with you on? Well, obviously you do, but what does the team look like in terms of the size or the type of people that you have working on the marketing aspects?
I'm not signed with anyone right now, so I have a few people that help me here and there, but I'm in charge of pretty much everything, especially when it comes to marketing. I really decide, what are we going to do? When are we going to do it? How are we going to do it? What's our strategy? I really come up with all that, and I write all the business plans and stuff like that. And then I have people that will help me follow through with it. So my team, if you will, is mainly just a few people that help my vision come to life, I guess you could say.
Writing the business plans. I like that. Have you any big lessons that you've learned along the way on in this aspect of the business?
Oh, I've definitely learned a lot. I could go on for hours about that, but I would say the biggest thing is that it takes time. It's a very slow business. It requires a lot of patience and a lot of hard work and dedication, and you really have to make it your whole life if you're serious about it. It can't be something that, you just do on the side or you just do when you feel like it, I guess. You really have to go all in and just give it your all and wait, I guess. You have to be patient and just keep working. And, one of my favorite sayings is the harder the work, the luckier you get. And I find that to be extremely true. And another one is hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Mm.
You really have to work for it. And I think I always knew that. I always knew it was going to be hard, but I don't know if I really knew what I was signing up for. Not that it would change my mind if I went back, but it's definitely a really tough business, which I know everybody says, but it's really true. I mean, everything they say about the music business is true and it's real and it's a struggle, but it's kind of a beautiful struggle and it's one of those industries that although it's really difficult to kind of get through and to make it, if you will, it's got a lot of fulfilling aspects in it. There's a lot of, especially, if you're a creative person, getting to get your music out there and see how it connects with people kind of makes all the struggle worth it. So,
Yeah, that's nice. I like that. A beautiful struggle. I have spoken with a wide age ranging list of guests in the short time that the podcast has been going. I just started earlier this year, and a common theme's been coming up, and that is one with I lost one of the words you used, but you mentioned talent, but you were basically also speaking about perseverance and believing in yourself probably was in there as well. And yeah, I've had that commonly across the board. That one of my favorites, one of my guests had said you can have 99% talent, but only 1% of the enthusiasm and perseverance and belief in yourself, and you're not going to make it. It's going to be really tough to make it, and if you flip it the other way around, and it makes a lot of difference. Clearly, you are very talented, and all the folks who have had this conversation with me too are very talented. But I think, to the gentleman's point that I was just talking about, that he'd seen in his days so many very talented people that you're just kind of lacking in the other part, so they weren't able to make it happen.
Oh yeah. I always say it's kind of like a triangle, and you need 2 of the 3 points to make it. And the 3 points to me are talent, passion, drive, and money, because it does take quite a bit of investment if you really want to do it and go all in. Yeah, I mean, what the guy you were talking about said, I see so many people here that are more talented than you can believe, but they don't have, maybe they don't have the work ethic, they don't have the passion, they don't need it. You really have to need it if you want to make it. It has to be, something you can't live without. It can't just be, oh, that would be cool, that would be fun.
Yeah.
It's got to be like a fire inside of you. And like I said, I've seen a lot of people that they're really talented and they're great people, but unfortunately they don't have the passion, they don't have like the need for it. It's not a part of them. It's just kind of something they like to do. And Nashville is full of talented people.
That's what I hear. That's what I hear. Yeah, I've seen this myself throughout my life, that talented people without the drive are easily passed up by those who are not necessarily as talented but have the drive, and will almost inevitably eventually reach a level of talent that equal the early, the early ones. But well,
and, being surrounded by all these talented people in Nashville also just kind of raises the bar and has definitely made me grow into a better musician. So eventually, if you're surrounded by all these people, you're going to have to practice at some point.
Yeah, it makes obvious sense now that you say it. It's something that I think about a lot, both as a musician and just in life in general. It's so great to be around people that are better and smarter than you, especially if they're your friends. And I'm sure that Nashville's a wonderful place for that. Lots of talent, as you say.
It makes you grow at a ridiculous rate.
Oh, I can only imagine. Well, Alyssa, it has been such a pleasure to chat with you today. And in one regard, I hope that our conversation was different given the theme of the podcast. I certainly enjoyed meeting you, chatting with you. I hope we can do it again sometime in the future. I have a feeling that, as do many others, that you are destined for lots of great things, and it'll be fun to watch.
Well, thank you. I would for sure love to do it again.
I look forward to speaking with you again sometime soon.
Same to you. Thank you.
This episode was powered by Podcast Startup. If you feel you need a little help with that podcast you're contemplating, Podcast Startup may be just the thing for you. Podcast Startup is a program designed for new podcasters. Did you know that most podcasts don't make it past their first few episodes? That's right. They start, they stall, and then they die. Sustaining a podcast ain't easy. It's commitment. A lack of planning and misaligned expectations are a recipe for fast burnout and fade out for podcasters. This is exactly the kind of thing that Podcast Startup was designed to help you with. If you're intrigued, if you want to start a podcast the right way, go to unstarvingmusician.com/podcast startup to learn more and to receive free podcast startup tips from yours truly. Thank you for listening. You can leave us feedback, questions, comments, complaints at unstarvingmusician.com/feedback. If you enjoyed this podcast, please follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. If you love this podcast, please visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor to learn about the many ways of showing your love and support. Your support does indeed equal love. The series music you heard in this episode is New Gods Part 2 by yours truly. Find links for all the places to hear the full version with vocals by yours truly at rabonzo.com. If you do not yet have a website for your music, check out Bandzoogle. It was created to help musicians and bands build their website and manage direct-to-fan marketing and sales. Bandzoogle has amazing design options, a commission-free store to sell music, merch, tickets, and more, plus tools that can capture detailed fan data for you. Try it at bandzoogle.com. Use the promo code RABONZO, that's ROBONZO, to get 15% off your first year. Find links for all the people and things talked about in this episode at unstarvingmusician.com. Peace, love, and a whole lot of gratitude.